Her body was found at a makeshift dump site below the Byram Swinging Bridge back in 1978.
On September 3, 1978, a horrific discovery was made when a body was found in a landfill in Rankin County, Mississippi. Who was this victim, dumped with no dignity within this trash heap? Less than 2 decades later, on May 13, 1997, at an archaeological site in Rockdale, Illinois, an unsuspecting archaeologist thought they'd made a magnificent discovery. But when they looked closer, they were shocked to see that what they had found was actually fresh human remains. What connected these two cases? Nothing, except for the fact that the victims in both cases could not be identified by authorities when their remains were found. Years later, however, with advancements in DNA technology, these Jane Does would have a chance to finally get their names back. Hi friends, and welcome back to Mysterious Hook. Today, we will be looking at 2 Jane Doe cases where the victims were finally identified in 2023. But before we get into that, if you have a moment, please consider subscribing to the channel, as it helps motivate us to keep creating new content for you regularly. Hit the notification bell to never miss another video. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this mystery. It was a bright Tuesday morning on September 3, 1978, when a grisly discovery was made in an illegal landfill located approximately 1 mile south of an old bridge in Rankin County, Mississippi. The lifeless body of a young woman was found wrapped in a blanket. The area near the Byram Swinging Bridge was once a place of beauty and tranquility, but on this fateful day, it was transformed into a crime scene. The lifeless body of the young victim had been dumped unceremoniously amongst heaps of refuse, as if her existence had been discarded like yesterday's trash. Despite the best efforts of the investigators, there were no clues at the scene to help identify the victim, and she had likely been deceased for several days before being found. She was a nameless victim without any family and friends to mourn her loss. The gruesome details of her death were not immediately clear, but investigators did note that she had suffered a severe blow to the head. The woman was completely nude, with no personal effects to offer even a hint at her identity. It was as if she had simply appeared out of thin air, only to meet a tragic end at the hands of a heartless killer. Who was she, and who could have done such a terrible thing to her? These were the questions that lingered in the minds of the investigators. It was difficult to imagine the pain and suffering the young woman had endured before her tragic end. Her body was then sent for an autopsy to determine the cause of her death that same day on September 3, 1978. The mystery of the woman deepened as the autopsy report revealed that her cause of death was a severe head trauma. The examiners found no evidence of physical assault or sexual abuse, but they did find multiple abrasions on her face, arms, and back. Despite their thorough examination, they were unable to determine the exact circumstances that led to her untimely demise. The only clue they had was her age, which they estimated to be between 20 to 25 years old. The investigators were determined to bring justice to the unidentified victim found at the illegal landfill in Rankin County. The next day, on September 4, 1978, they scoured the area and started with knocking on doors and asking locals if they could recall any suspicious activity or out-of-the-ordinary occurrences during the time frame when the victim's body was found. But no one seemed to know anything about who this woman could be, so the investigators gave her a name, Mississippi Jane Doe. They continued to follow leads across the United States and Canada in hopes of uncovering her identity and pursue the case, but every avenue they explored hit a dead end. The case ultimately became cold and faded into obscurity, leaving behind unanswered questions and a sense of injustice for the victim. It would remain like this for over 4 decades. Finally, a glimmer of hope shone through in April 2021. The case was entered into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, NAMIS, for help, in the hope that someone, somewhere, might recognize her and bring her identity into light. The case, known only as UP79780, had stumped investigators for over 4 decades, with no known missing person reports matching the victim's description. However, even with the help of advanced technology and the resources of the NAMIS system, the woman's identity remained a mystery. It seemed like the case of the unidentified Jane Doe was doomed to be forever unsolved. But fate intervened when officials from Ohio contacted Rankin County Coroner David Ruth and his deputy, Heather Smith, about a strikingly similar case in their state which had been solved using genetic genealogy. Suddenly, the Mississippi officials found themselves reinvigorated and determined to finally get a step closer towards her identity. They filed a petition with the courts to exhume the victim's body, and after careful consideration of the evidence, Judge Dewey Arthur granted their request. The long-dormant case was about to be reignited, and the search for answers was just getting started. In April 2022, officials embarked on the mission to uncover the truth behind this decades-old mystery. With determination and a keen eye for detail, they carefully exhumed the body of the homicide victim, who had been buried for over 40 years. Coroner David Ruth and his team collected and prepared the forensic evidence with meticulous care, knowing that it could hold the key to finally identifying her. Their mission was clear: to extract the DNA necessary to unravel the secrets of the past. In the heart of Mississippi, there was a philanthropist named Carla Davis who was committed to help solve the state's unsolved cases. With a passion for justice and a generous heart, Carla stepped up to fund the exhumation of the unidentified woman and promised to continue funding the casework necessary to identify her. She knew that finding the woman's identity was the key to solving the case and bringing closure to the woman's family. Her commitment to justice and compassion for the victim and her family serves as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there are still people out there fighting for what's right. Despite their best efforts, the first 2 attempts at DNA testing failed to provide any breakthrough in identifying the woman. However, Carla Davis and the tenacious Rankin County investigators refused to give up hope. They decided to turn to a cutting-edge laboratory with an impressive track record of solving complex cases, Othram. This forensic laboratory had already helped crack more than a dozen challenging cases in Mississippi, and they were up for the challenge of unlocking the secrets hidden within the forensic evidence of this case. With a renewed sense of hope, they embarked on a 3rd attempt, determined to bring her identity forward. In a scientific breakthrough that breathed new life into the decades-old case, Othram Laboratories received a small vial of forensic evidence from the 1978 James Doe. Despite previous attempts at DNA extraction ending in failure, the Othram lab team were determined to crack the case wide open. And finally, they were able to produce a DNA extract that could potentially lead to solving the case. With the advanced technology of forensic-grade genome sequencing, Othram scientists delved into the DNA of the unidentified female homicide victim. The genetic code contained within her bones was like a puzzle waiting to be solved, and the team at Othram worked tirelessly to put the pieces together. Using their state-of-the-art equipment and expertise, they were able to unravel the mystery of her genetics and create a comprehensive genealogical profile. After the comprehensive genealogical profile was produced, Othram's chief genetic genealogist, Carla Davis, took the lead in searching for potential relatives of Mississippi Jane Doe. A Mississippi native dedicated to solving the state's unsolved cases, Carla was determined to bring closure to this decades-old mystery. She combed through public records, social media, and other sources to identify potential family members. After extensive research, Carla discovered a potential close relative of the victim. She was possibly the daughter of Mississippi Jane Doe. Additional DNA testing was conducted, and the results confirmed the investigative leads delivered by Othram. The mystery of the 1978 Jane Doe was finally solved, and her family could finally receive the answers they had been searching for. The identity of the long unknown Jane Doe was finally revealed on February 12, 2023. The woman was no longer a nameless victim. She was Tonya Lee Wills Mullins, and she had been 22 when her life ended in such a tragic manner. Tonya, born on May 12, 1956 in Potter, Texas, was a child with a heart full of love and compassion. Her mother, Carrie Coffey, instilled in her daughter the values of kindness and empathy, which Tonya carried with her throughout her life. As a young girl, Tonya would often sing to soothe the souls of those around her, her angelic voice bringing comfort to all who heard it. These qualities of warmth and tenderness made Tonya a beloved figure among family and friends, and they remain an inspiration to all who knew her. When Tonya was 16 years old in the early 70s, she met Jim Mullin, who was a student at River Road Independent School. Tonya and Jim were just two young souls, still in the prime of their youth, when fate brought them together. They met in a small town of Texas, where life was slow and easy, but love had a way of making things exciting. From the moment they laid eyes on each other, they knew that they were meant to be together. Tonya had always been a shy girl, but Jim brought out the best in her. His charming smile and easygoing personality made her feel like she was the most important person in the world. And for Jim, Tonya was the missing piece of his puzzle. He had never felt such a strong connection with anyone before, and he knew that he had to have her in his life. But their love was not without its challenges. Jim's family was not fond of Tonya, and they made their disapproval known from the very beginning. They saw her as an outsider, someone who didn't belong in their close-knit community. But Jim was not one to be swayed by others' opinions. He was determined to be with Tonya, no matter what. Despite objections from their parents, the two lovers stood firm in their decision and exchanged their vows, determined to build a life together. Tonya, the beautiful bride, was a force to be reckoned with, standing up for what she believed in and always putting the needs of others before her own. Her strength and determination were evident in every aspect of her life, and her love for her family knew no bounds. And so the young couple embarked on a journey of love and commitment after being wed in 1973, a journey that would define them for years to come. A year into their marriage, Tonya gave birth to their first daughter, Tammy, in 1974, and 3 years later in 1977 they had another, whom they named Crystal. In 1978, Tonya moved to Mississippi with her husband Jim Mullins and their two toddlers. Sadly, Tonya went missing after some months and was never seen again, leaving her family and friends to wonder what had happened to her for over 4 decades. But now, thanks to the dedication of forensic experts and the funding provided by philanthropist Carla Davis, Tonya's story can finally be told. Tammy Mullins, who is now 49 years old, reveals the story of her family's disappearance. Tammy's father had left to find a home for the family in Texas, but when he returned, he found his wife and 2 young daughters missing. He had no idea where they were. He made all the possible efforts to find his wife and his daughters, but it was all in vain. It was 3 months later that Tammy's grandmother received a mysterious phone call where she was told that if she wanted her granddaughters back, then she should come to DFW Airport. Before she could understand anything or could ask about Tonya, the call ended. Jim and his mother hurriedly went to the airport, which led to a tearful reunion between the girls and their father at the DFW airport. However, the joy was short-lived as their father was informed that their mother Tonya would be in touch soon, but that never happened. The family was left in the dark, wondering what had happened to Tonya. Until now, that is, since the power of forensic science has helped Tammy and her family finally have the answers they've been seeking for over 40 years. Tammy Mullin shared that after her mother's disappearance, their family received conflicting stories about where she had gone. Some said that she had left for Mexico with a man, while others claimed that she was in Florida. Despite the uncertainty surrounding her whereabouts, Tammy and her sister remember their mother as someone who loved and adored them. Tonya had a special talent for dressing them up like little dolls. Tammy and Crystal spoke with unwavering admiration for their father, who always answered their questions with honesty and never spoke ill of their mother. They knew that he loved her until the very end and was just as heartbroken as they were. After they were informed of what had happened to her, the sisters decided to honor her memory by traveling to Mississippi to attend a memorial service on March 14, 2023. It was a journey filled with mixed emotions, but they knew it was important to be there for each other and to pay tribute to the woman who had loved them so deeply. Tammy spoke with a resolute voice as she shared her thoughts on the recent turn of events in her mother's case. She expressed that the discovery of her mother's murder had opened a new chapter in their lives, one that they never expected to face. The trauma of their mother's sudden departure has now been replaced with the urgent need to find the person responsible for her death. Tammy believes that divine justice will prevail and that the perpetrator will ultimately face the consequences of their actions. Despite the long passage of time, there is still hope of finding a suspect. As the coroner David Ruth has suggested that it is not impossible. The Mullin sisters are determined to seek closure and find justice for their beloved mother, no matter how long it takes. The unnatural death of Tonya not only left her family but also the community of Mississippi with unanswered questions. But thanks to the tireless effort of the local sheriff's department, Tonya Mullins was finally identified. Coroner David Ruth expressed his satisfaction with the outcome, saying that revealing the identity of the victim was the most rewarding thing to him. And the best part was that the investigation didn't cost taxpayers a single penny. Thanks to the generosity of Carla Davis, who funded the exhumation and forensic testing necessary to solve the case. It's heartening to know that there are still good people out there willing to help resolve these cold cases and bring justice to families like the Mullins. While the missing persons investigation is now closed, the murder investigation is still ongoing, as the killer behind this heinous act is yet to be caught. This case takes us to Rockdale, a village in the state of Illinois, located a little over 40 miles west of Chicago. May the 13th, 1997 started out like any other typical day in Rockdale, Illinois. The sun was beating down relentlessly on a building construction site, where heavy machinery and workers were busy moving debris and waste from a dusty landfill. Amidst all the chaos and noise, Kevin P. McGowan, an archaeologist from the prestigious University of Illinois, was quietly and methodically sifting through the layers of refuse and debris, searching for any hidden artifacts or historical remnants. But little did he know that he was about to stumble upon something far more shocking and disturbing than he could ever have imagined. As his eyes sifted through the layers of debris, his trained eyes noticed something peculiar. There, buried beneath the dusty landfill in Rockdale, Illinois, was a bone unlike any other in the pile. He felt a jolt of excitement as he carefully extracted it from the debris. His heart raced with anticipation. It was covered in dirt and grime, evidence of its long-forgotten existence. With a gentle hand he wiped it clean, revealing its true shape and size. The bone seemed to tell a story of its own, whispering secrets of a time long past. But as he examined the bone more closely, he realized with growing horror that it was a human's bone. The archaeologist, along with his assistant, had stumbled upon the remains of a human body. According to the police, the remains were found at about 10:15 a.m. on September 3, 1978, several hundred yards northeast of Mound Road and Moen Avenue, on the outskirts of Rockdale. As his discovery sent shockwaves through the dusty landfill in Rockdale, he quickly called the sheriff's office and the authorities were quick to respond. What started as a routine archaeological research in an unincorporated Joliet Township turned into a full-blown investigation when a human bone was discovered on the premises. The police, arriving at the scene in a flurry of activity, cordoned off the area to begin their investigation. It was apparent to investigators that they were dealing with a homicide case. It seemed that whoever buried the body underground was trying to conceal it from the world. The remains had been unceremoniously buried, hinting at a cruel and inhumane act. The investigators could tell that the victim had been murdered because only one bone was discovered, which means that the person would have been cut into pieces, and the other body parts would have been scattered at different places, adding a sense of urgency to their work. They were determined to uncover the truth behind this heinous crime, and the hunt for answers had begun. The stakes were high, and the weight of responsibility on their shoulders was immense, but they were ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, prompting law enforcement officials to launch a thorough investigation. Who was the deceased, and how did the person end up buried in the landfill? These were the questions on everyone's mind. The investigation was far from easy. It would take years of tireless work, countless interviews, and the latest scientific breakthroughs to solve the mystery. The officers stood around the partial remains of the body, their eyes locked onto the grisly sight mixed with curiosity and concern. It was clear that something had disturbed the rest of the body, and the officers couldn't help but wonder where the other body parts were. The scene was quickly secured, and detectives were called to investigate further. With their experience and expertise, they hoped to uncover any additional skeletal remains that might provide vital clues to solving this macabre crime. Amidst the rubble and debris, the investigators painstakingly combed through the construction landfill, the layers of brick, stone, and wood. As they dug deeper, what they discovered became more gruesome and chilling. Skeletal remains, broken and fragmented, emerged from the debris. The source of this debris was traced back to the Rustcraft building, a massive three-story structure with a full basement that once dominated the Joliet skyline. The investigators knew that they had their work cut out for them as they delved deeper into this bone-chilling discovery. In the world of forensic investigation, pathologists are the skilled professionals who meticulously examine the human body and its tissues to unravel the secrets of death. However, in the case of the unknown remains, authorities take a slightly different approach. Instead of a traditional pathologist examination, the remains undergo an anthropological examination. This fascinating field involves the study of human skeletal remains to determine age, gender, ancestry, and other characteristics that can help piece together the identity of the deceased. With only partial skeletal remains recovered, it was a daunting task to piece together the clues and unravel the secrets. They managed to glean some fascinating insights into the life of these mysterious bone fragments, revealing a glimpse of the past and perhaps even unlocking some secrets of the person's untimely demise. From just fragments of bones, pathologists were able to put together some fascinating details about the unknown person on October 14, 1997. The bones were of a woman. She was estimated to be in her youth, somewhere between the ages of 15 and 24 years old, with her entire life ahead of her. She stood between 5 and 5 foot 10 inches tall. Despite her incomplete remains, these details allowed them to imagine what this young woman might have been like in life, and spark a sense of curiosity about her untold story. Without any identity to be followed, the person whose bones were found was given the name Rockdale's Jane Doe. Forensic pathologists were unable to determine any other distinguishing features about her appearance. Was she fair-skinned or olive-toned? Did she have auburn hair or jet black locks? The answers to these questions, like the woman herself, were buried in the ground and lost to time. Yet, despite the lack of information, the pathologists remained undaunted in their quest for answers, knowing that even the smallest detail could make all the difference in solving this perplexing case. As the investigators looked towards the timeline of events, a poignant realization dawned upon them. The unknown woman had likely lived and died in the years leading up to the demolition of the Rustcraft building in 1986. What was her life like during those tumultuous years, and what led to her untimely demise? The world around her was changing rapidly, with new technologies, cultural shifts, and political upheavals reshaping the landscape. Was she a witness to these changes, or was she struggling to survive amidst the chaos? As the investigators pondered these questions, they couldn't help but feel a deep sense of sadness for the woman whose life had ended in such a tragic and mysterious manner. When they dug deeper into the history of the mysterious building in whose rubble the remains were found, they uncovered a treasure trove of information that left them intrigued. It turns out that this ancient structure had been used by numerous companies since its inception in 1907. It was once a majestic factory, a towering structure, which was struck by disaster in 1992. The flames of a ferocious fire raged through the building for 2 long days, devouring everything in its path. The flames reached high into the sky, licking at the clouds like a vengeful beast, taunting the brave firefighters who fought bravely to contain the inferno. But their efforts were in vain, and the once magnificent factory was reduced to a mere shadow of its former self, a solemn reminder of the destructive power of fire. Before its demise, the factory had become something of a heaven for the local homeless population. The building was far from safe, but for those who had nowhere else to go, it provided shelter from the elements. However, it was also known to be a hotbed of criminal activity, with nefarious characters lurking in the shadows. As the smoke cleared and the ashes settled, the city knew they had to act fast. The once towering factory had become a ticking time bomb, posing a threat to all who ventured near. With heavy hearts, the decision was made to demolish the building, but the question remained: what to do with the rubble? A stroke of genius provided a solution that the debris should be carefully cleared, leaving behind a barren wasteland where the factory once stood. However, the remnants of the wreckage were not discarded, but rather repurposed. The basement of the factory was filled with the remains of the building, providing a solid foundation for what would come next. When they investigated further, they learned that in 1995, a curious decision was made to uproot the building's remains and relocate them to a new location in Rockdale, where the bone fragments were found. Their theory that the woman was killed elsewhere and then buried in this spot was confirmed when the pathologist informed them that the body of the unknown woman had been disturbed not once, but twice after death, suggesting that someone had been present at the original factory location. The mystery surrounding the woman's demise only deepened with this disturbing revelation. In 2009, hope emerged when the Will County coroner, Patrick K. O'Neill, formed a dedicated team to bring justice to the forgotten victim. The Coldcase unit embarked on an arduous journey, meticulously piecing together every detail of the case. Over the years, forensic anthropology studies were conducted. DNA was extracted and entered into the vast National Missing and Unidentified Persons database, NamUs, and the profile was tirelessly searched in CODIS, the FBI's combined DNA index system. The team even turned to the latest in FBI technology, commissioning a specialized unit to create a facial reconstruction of the unknown woman. Yet each lead was pursued and ultimately eliminated, leaving the team with more questions than answers. On June 8, 2022, the Will County Coroner's Office teamed up with Othram, a forensic DNA sequencing laboratory, to solve the puzzling cold case of Rockdale's Jane Doe. Armed with cutting-edge technology and a determination to solve this long-standing riddle, the team set out on their quest. But it wouldn't be easy. Previous attempts at DNA testing had failed, leaving little hope for a breakthrough. However, the Will County Coroner's Office was undeterred and even contributed funding to support the new round of testing. With advanced forensic DNA testing at their disposal, the team was determined to crack the case once and for all. And with the help of a crowdfund campaign that raised additional funds and support from the community, the team was finally able to move forward with their investigation. The stakes were high and the pressure was on, but the team was ready to do whatever it took to bring closure to this long-standing mystery. Kristen Middleman, the Chief Development Officer at Othram, knew the importance of identifying the perpetrators or victims of a crime, and that's exactly what Othram was able to do in this case. The experts at Othram were determined to crack the case, and they knew that advanced DNA testing was the key to unlocking the mystery of the unknown woman's identity. Through forensic-grade genome sequencing technology, they were able to extract key genetic information from the skeletal remains, enabling them to construct a comprehensive genealogical profile. But that was just the beginning. With dogged determination, the Othram's in-house genetic genealogy team then took over, tirelessly researching the family tree to create an investigative lead for law enforcement. Their dedication paid off, and the breakthrough they were hoping for finally emerged. The lab was able to uncover a match of possible relatives, providing the veteran investigators with a crucial lead. It was the moment they had been waiting for, the break in the case that could finally bring some closure to this unsolvable mystery. The investigation was far from over, but this breakthrough gave them renewed hope. Once the leads were returned to law enforcement, cold case investigators interviewed several people in Illinois, Texas, and California. After years of painstaking investigation, the answers finally came to them. Othram's advanced DNA testing had led them to a man in California named Christ O'Brien, who they believed could be the key to unlocking the mystery of the unidentified woman. Cold case investigators from the coroner's office quickly made their way to his house and interviewed him, and discovered that he had a sister who he had not seen since 1984. Could this missing sister be the unidentified woman they had been searching for all these years? To answer this question, they collected DNA from Christ O'Brien and sent it to the Othram labs for further testing. And the subsequent kin SNP testing confirmed that Christ and the identified woman were half-siblings. His long-lost sister had finally been found, thanks to the tireless efforts of law enforcement and the cutting-edge technology of Othram. On March 3, 2023, after 26 years of being a nameless victim in a cold case, the woman who had been found in the ruins of an Illinois factory in 1997 finally had a name: Marie R. O'Brien. Born in the charming town of Aurora on July 16, 1966, Marie was a daughter, sister, and friend to those who knew her. Her elder brother, Christ O'Brien, was someone she looked up to and loved dearly. And though her life was tragically cut short, Marie's memory will now live on with dignity and warmth, as her loved ones can finally lay her to rest with a sense of closure. Marie R. O'Brien was a bright and cheerful student at Golden Rule Charter School, where her outgoing nature and friendly demeanor earned her many friends. Her trusting nature, however, often raised concern among those who cared about her. Her elder brother, Christ O'Brien, described her by saying that she often placed her trust in random strangers too easily, a trait that may have ultimately led to her tragic fate. Despite her brother's efforts to contact her after 1984, Marie disappeared without a trace, leaving behind a void in the lives of those who knew her. Marie R. O'Brien may have been a woman of few words, but her actions spoke volumes. Her community in Aurora knew her as a true gem, a kind-hearted soul who always put others first. From a young age, Marie's talents were evident to all. She was a creative force, and her passion for art was undeniable. Her paintings were breathtaking and were cherished by all who received them. But Marie's generosity extended far beyond her artistic talents. She was always willing to lend a helping hand, and her selfless nature was an inspiration to all those around her. It's no wonder that she was so well loved by her friends and family, who couldn't get enough of her infectious warmth and charming personality. Though her time was tragically cut short, Marie's legacy lives on through the lives she touched with her kindness and creativity. But the case is not yet solved. There are questions that still linger in the minds of Marie's loved ones. Who took her away from them? As they wait for justice to be served, they hold on to hope that the perpetrator will be caught and closure will finally be within reach. For Christ, Marie's older brother, the wait has been agonizing. Every day, he wonders who could have done this to his beloved sister and why. But he remains determined to see the case through to its end, to bring peace to Maria's memory and justice to her name. The search for answers continues, and the family's faith in the investigative team never wavers.